The US military gets the best of the best, right? Money is no issue for Uncle Sam, or so I'm told. So when I say Mil-Spec, what comes to mind? Since everything the military gets is the best of the best, Milspec has to be the best. But why are Milspec parts on ARs usually at a lower price tier than parts that don't claim to be Milspec? Greg says that Milspec is trash for this reason, but is that really true? I went on a bit of a journey through history to find out the truth about Milspec, so come along with me because by the end you'll know the real history, the strict standards, and the key differences and how it all affects us as builders and buyers in the modern day, so you aren't throwing your money down the drain on military-grade hardware or laughing at your buddy the next time he says he has a Milspec buffer tube. If you're just starting out in the space, you might be tempted by the taglines on boxes or product pages saying something like military grade. And if you're in the firearms community, you may puke a bit in your mouth whenever you see the Milspec tag and think that just means the minimum quality possible. Both opinions are not 100% true or false because a Milspec design may not only mean quality, but it also means compatibility and use case. Let's take a look at a couple of examples of what I'm talking about here. First up, buffer tubes. Mil-Spec tubes are forged from 775 T6 aluminum with strong rolled threads. What about commercial tubes for comparison? Usually they're extruded 6061 T6, which is softer and weaker, especially in the threads. The most important thing to pay attention to here are dimensions. Milspec has a smaller outer diameter, about 1.148 inches, and a flat back. Commercial tubes are a bit chunkier at 1.17 inches and often have a slanted back. We're going to get into this in a little bit more detail later, but the big reason for picking a standard is compatibility. That is the core intent of Milspec standards, and it's what keeps things the same across components so that they can be as interchangeable as possible. Another example of this would be triggers. A Milspec trigger is going to be a lot heavier and more deliberate, usually around the 6-pound zone or so. This is because they are meant to be used in a life or death situation, and the user needs to be 100% sure that what they're shooting at is the bad guy. You wouldn't want a lightweight trigger in those situations, and it also reduces the risk of Private Schmuckatelli having an accidental discharge out in the field.
Drill Sergeant, I dropped my grenade somewhere over there.
If you're in a long-range shooting competition, on the other hand, you may want a super lightweight adjustable trigger. Something that can be tuned down to around 1 or 1.5 pounds, such as my personal favorite, the Trigger Tech Diamond adjustable trigger. Triggers like this allow you to adjust it down to your preferred weight, and it also has an easy-to-install drop-in design, which is perfect for those of us who build ARs all the time, but this is by no means Milspec because this is a product meant for a specific use case and a specific user. It also means that because of those two factors, it's gonna cost a lot more than a normal Milspec trigger. These are the most practical factors to keep in mind when you look at Milspec parts, but how did we even get this standard in the first place? Well, as usual, it has to do with military history. So I was digging into a little bit of the history, and what I found out was back in 1957, our guy, Eugene Stoner at Armalite, started cooking up the AR-15, basically a lighter version of the earlier and bulkier AR-10. The Army was looking for something new, and when they tested the AR-15 in 1958, it blew many of the members of the testing committee away. Some of them even thought it could replace the much heavier M14 that was currently in use in the military. But not everyone was on the same page because there was a lot of pushback at the time. The military had a soft spot for the M14's bigger 7.62 millimeter round since it had been performing well for decades. And they didn't want to switch to a tiny 5.56 millimeter round that they thought wouldn't be as effective. Plus, there were all these NATO agreements and concerns about getting a whole new weapon system into production. Long story short, it wasn't until December 1963 that the AR-15 officially became the M16 and was issued to troops in Vietnam. Now, I just blew past a ton of history there, so if you want to learn more about how all of this actually happened, our gun historian Sam put together a way deeper dive into this topic and the Colt 602, which you can watch right over here. When it first hit Vietnam, there were a bunch of reliability issues, leading to casualties out in the jungles of Vietnam. Those losses were a direct result of the rifle not functioning properly. But what exactly caused all that? It all had to do with changes to the original specifications that Eugene Stoner had perfected. Changes like switching to cheaper ammo, removing the chrome lining to save money, advertising that the AR was self-cleaning, leading to lack of maintenance, and some other minor design changes that were made to save money. Do you start to see a pattern here? To address these issues and standardize the weapon system's components and materials, a team was assembled.
Avengers! Assemble.
This team included representatives from various military branches, government agencies, and contracted manufacturers, all operating under the direction of the U.S. Army Material Command. The goal of this team was to build out a technical data package, or a TDP for short. The TDP would define required materials, measurements, tolerances, quality inspection protocols for every component, ensuring standardized production for military contractors. Now, who are the key players in the TDP? First up, we have Papa Eugene Stoner from Armalite. He gave us the original engineering specs for the AR-15, setting the foundation. Things like the specific 7075 T6 aluminum and the 4150 CMV steel for the direct impingement gas system, and even the plastic furniture were all his ideas, so he had to be included. Then Colt Firearms stepped in. After acquiring the rights to the AR-15, their engineering team really refined those initial specs. They took feedback from the early field trials and the Army requirements, incorporating it into their design expertise. This proprietary know-how became part of the TDP and was even shared under government licenses with other contractors later on. The U.S. Army Material Command was also heavily involved, establishing formal contact points with other branches like the Air Force and the Marine Corps, and authorizing direct communication for TDP development and field feedback. Just like any government-sanctioned activity always has, wink, they even had congressional oversight. Representatives formed committees to review the rifle's performance, especially during the Vietnam trials, scrutinizing both the engineering and the supply chain decisions. And finally, the contracted manufacturers themselves, companies like FN, GM Hydromatic, and Harrington Richardson, were all involved. They were licensed to produce the M16s according to the TDP for government contracts under the DoD oversight. Now, we know all the players. How did we actually get this master blueprint for the AR anyway? It involved extensive field testing with prototypes, with refinements based on combat field testing use, especially that crucial Vietnam War performance data. You know, that not so good data. The Army Material Command and other technical experts verified durability, reliability, and manufacturing feasibility. And trust me, it wasn't always smooth sailing. Issues with metallurgy, powder fouling, and part dimensions led to consistent revisions over time. Formal panels like the M16 Rifle Review Panel would convene to debate, collect, and vet data for final standards as they kept going. What these revisions led to was specific specifications for material composition, like the 775 T6 aluminum for receivers and the 4150 CMV steel for barrels, exact thread sizes, dimensions, tolerance maps, and detailed inspection steps. That's what makes it Milspec. Existence of the TDP is crucial for military procurement today. Only weapons made with this exact package can truly be considered Milspec. M16s with any changes are tightly regulated by the DoD and executed by licensed contractors. There are some lies that people still believe about the standard that we'll get into shortly, but before we do that, let's talk about what Milspec actually means. Milspec is short for military specification. It simply means a product is built to precise documented standards set by the US military. These specifications are incredibly detailed, covering everything from materials used to manufacturing processes, dimensions, and even testing procedures. All the things that was laid out by the TDP. Think of it as a comprehensive blueprint for gear that Uncle Sam can count on, ensuring a consistent level of quality and performance across all units and branches. The importance of Milspec exceeds far beyond firearms. It matters for a lot of countless other components and systems that are used constantly by the military. Think about Milspec connectors for cabling and aircraft communication systems. These connectors are designed to withstand extreme temperatures, vibrations, moisture, and electromagnetic interference, ensuring vital connections remain secure and functional in a wide variety of environments. At the same time, Milspec standards apply to everything from vehicle parts, uniforms, rations, medical supplies, and even software. In these applications, the strict adherence to Milspec ensures that critical components can be replaced in the field with a new one from any approved manufacturer, meaning if switched out, it will function perfectly, safeguarding success of missions across the world. Imagine a global war with a massive military force with me, for example. Something like NATO. Countless units deployed worldwide, each needing equipment that works seamlessly together. Milspec ensures that a part made by one manufacturer will fit and function perfectly with a part made by another, as long as both adhere to the same specification. This guarantees that whether you're in the deserts of the Middle East or the forests of Eastern Europe, your gear will just work together, no questions asked. Now, this is where some folks get it twisted. Milspec is not a promise of the best product available. It's the minimum acceptable quality and standard for military duty. While it ensures good quality and a baseline of performance, it doesn't necessarily mean the product represents the peak of performance or the absolute highest grade of materials. The military often prioritizes ruggedness, safety, and cost efficiency over broad, specialized, high-performance attributes that might be more relevant to civilian enthusiasts. But we'll get into that more when we talk about the differences in Milspec components and civilian design parts. What I found out during my research is what I'm calling the civilian lie that you need to be aware of. When a part is labeled Milspec on the open market, it usually means that it was built to that standard, but lacks the rigorous military inspection and certification standards required to truly be Milspec. You're getting the dimensions, the material specs, and the design intent, but without the mandatory, often extensive quality control that the military puts into its actual contracted components, though. This can include everything from destructive testing to environmental stress screenings to detailed material analysis and manufacturing process audits. It's a lot of stuff. It's like cooking a beef Wellington at home instead of going to the official Gordon Ramsay restaurant. It's good, but it's not as good as that.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Only components that are built by official government contracts for official government business are truly Milspec. So the 20,000-foot view, if you will, treat Milspec as a signal for minimum standards and compatibility, not as an absolute guarantee of top-tier quality. It's a baseline, not necessarily the pinnacle, but it's also not trash, and it shouldn't be avoided at all costs. Now, when should you prioritize Milspec? Let's find out. If compatibility is your priority or you're looking to run a wide variety of stocks and accessories, you absolutely want to stick with those Milspec dimensions. It's the industry standard for a reason, and it'll save you a lot of headaches down the road, especially if you're building ARs all the time. Secondly, for durability. Suppose you're a high-volume shooter, someone who pushes thousands of rounds a year downrange, or you're in a professional capacity where you work with guns every day. In those cases, you want parts that meet or, frankly, exceed the material standards. Think of 775 T6 aluminum or 4150 CMV steel. That's where you'll find the robust gear that won't give up on you over time. But always do your own research on products you're shopping for and look up independent reviews from others to get an idea of their durability. Now, when should you use commercial parts? Kind of like what we talked about with triggers, when you have specialized applications that you want your gun to be used for. If you're shooting a competition, you may want a lightweight gun that allows you to do easy transitions from target to target. Or you want a gun that's easier to manipulate, so you want things like extended mag releases, bolt catches, and an ambidextrous safety. In those cases, you're not going to want to go with the mil-spec options here. You want to get the parts that fit the application that you're trying to build for. This is my final tip, and it's a crucial one. Unless you're looking for specific compatibilities like your buffer tube, ignore the label first. Seriously, disengage from the marketing hype. Instead, focus on materials, the heat treatment, the coatings, and understand the differences between all of them. Perhaps, most importantly, look up some independent reviews. That's how you make a smart, informed decision and ensure your build is ready for your specific needs. If you want to see a video to help weed through all of those differences, then leave me a comment, and I'd love to work on that video for you guys. So next time someone like Greg says Milspec is trash, or wonder why those military-grade parts are sometimes cheaper, you'll know the real story. It's not about being the absolute best, but about being consistently reliable, compatible, and meeting a rigorous standard born out of necessity and tested in the toughest environments. And if you want to know the long storied history of the AR that brought us these mil-spec specifications in the first place, then our old soul Sam put together an entire history video on Armalite, the original grandpa company that brought us the AR in the first place, that you can look at right over here.